In today's discussion, we are going to dive deep into a topic that has shaped societies, influenced billions, and sparked countless debates. We will explore the foundational beliefs, historical context, and real-world implications of religious teachings, specifically focusing on Islam and its interpretations. This video is not about personal attacks or bias, but about critically analyzing ideas, questioning narratives, and understanding perspectives with an open mind. Throughout this journey, I invite you to challenge your thoughts, engage in meaningful dialogue, and reflect on what you hear, because knowledge is power, and only through knowledge can we find truth. Stay with me until the end, because what you are about to learn may change the way you see the world forever. Islam, one of the world's major religions, traces its roots back to the 7th century in the Arabian Peninsula. Founded by the Prophet Muhammad, Islam is based on the teachings of the Quran, which Muslims believe to be the literal word of God, as revealed to Muhammad through the angel Gabriel. The religion rapidly spread across the Middle East, North Africa, and beyond, influencing cultures, politics, and societal structures. But what exactly does Islam teach at its core? The Quran, along with the Hadith, sayings and actions of Muhammad, serves as the foundation for Islamic doctrine. Among its core tenets are the 5 pillars of Islam: Shahada, faith; Salat, prayer; Zakat, charity; Saum, fasting; and Hajj, pilgrimage. These pillars define a Muslim's religious obligations and serve as guiding principles for daily life. However, interpretations of these teachings vary widely across different sects and cultural backgrounds. One of the most debated aspects of Islam is its stance on peace and violence. While many verses in the Quran advocate for compassion, mercy, and righteousness, there are also passages that discuss war, punishment, and strict adherence to divine law. This has led to ongoing discussions about whether Islam, as a whole, promotes peace, or whether certain interpretations have been used to justify violence. Another key point of discussion is the concept of jihad, often misunderstood or misrepresented. While jihad literally means struggle in Arabic, it has been interpreted in various ways, from an internal, spiritual struggle to become a better person, to armed conflict in the name of faith. The historical application of jihad has played a significant role in shaping the global perception of Islam, sometimes fueling both admiration and controversy. Islamic scholars and theologians often debate the historical and contextual meanings of Quranic verses. Some argue that certain passages were meant for specific historical events and should not be applied in a modern context. Others believe that the Quran is timeless and that all its teachings are applicable today, leading to different interpretations of Islamic law, governance, and social order. The diversity within Islam itself is crucial to understanding its teachings. The 2 major sects, Sunni and Shia, have theological and political differences that have shaped the course of Islamic history. Additionally, within these sects exist numerous schools of thought, each with its own interpretation of religious doctrine. This complexity makes Islam a deeply nuanced and multifaceted belief system, rather than a monolithic entity. Before we continue, ask yourself this: how much of what you know about Islam is based on personal study, and how much is based on media narratives? Keep an open mind, and let's explore the deeper layers of this discussion together. The rise of Islam was not just a religious transformation, it was also a political and military movement that reshaped the world. From its origins in Mecca and Medina, Islam rapidly expanded through military conquests, trade, and missionary efforts. Within a century of Muhammad's death in 632 CE, the Islamic Caliphate had stretched from Spain to India, influencing cultures, economies, and governance structures along the way. The rapid expansion of Islam was fueled by a combination of factors: military strategy, alliances, religious fervor, and the political instability of neighboring empires. The Byzantine and Persian empires, weakened by years of conflict, were unable to resist the momentum of the early Muslim conquests. This created a vacuum in which Islam was able to spread with unprecedented speed. Conversion to Islam was not always forced, contrary to popular belief. While military campaigns played a role in its expansion, many people converted due to the perceived justice of Islamic rule, economic benefits, or genuine belief in its message. The concept of dhimmi, or protected non-Muslim status, allowed Christians and Jews to live under Muslim rule in exchange for paying a tax, jizya, although this system also created social hierarchies. The spread of Islam brought about an era of immense intellectual and cultural growth. The Islamic Golden Age, 8th to 14th century, saw advancements in science, medicine, philosophy, and the arts. Scholars in cities like Baghdad, Cordoba, and Cairo translated ancient Greek and Roman texts, preserving knowledge that would later fuel the European Renaissance. However, this period also saw strict enforcement of religious law in many regions, raising questions about the balance between faith and free thought. The relationship between Islam and other religions was complex. While some Islamic rulers promoted tolerance and coexistence, others enforced strict laws on non-Muslims. The concept of Dar al-Islam, the House of Islam, versus Dar al-Harb, the House of War, was used to justify ongoing conflicts and expansionist policies. These ideological divisions still influence geopolitical struggles today. One of the key debates surrounding Islamic history is whether its expansion was primarily due to religious zeal or political ambition. While some historians argue that early Muslim leaders sought to spread Islam as a divine mission, others suggest that territorial control, economic gain, and power played an equally significant role. This duality continues to shape modern discussions about the role of religion in governance. As we reflect on this historical journey, it's important to ask, was the expansion of Islam driven purely by faith, or was it a complex mix of religion, politics, and military strategy? The answer is not black and white, and understanding this complexity is crucial to forming an informed perspective. The Quran is regarded by Muslims as the literal word of God, revealed to the Prophet Muhammad over 23 years. For over 1 billion people, it serves as a guide for personal conduct, spiritual enlightenment, and legal principles. But the interpretations of the Quran's message vary significantly, leading to contrasting views on whether it promotes peace or justifies violence. Many verses in the Quran emphasize peace, mercy, and justice. Teachings such as, "There is no compulsion in religion," Quran 2:256, and "If anyone kills a person, it is as if he has killed all mankind," Quran 5:32, are frequently cited by those who argue that Islam is a peaceful faith. These passages suggest that Islam promotes coexistence and human dignity, reinforcing the idea that faith should not be imposed by force. However, other verses in the Quran discuss war, punishment, and conflict, leading to debate over their meanings and applications. Passages such as "Fight those who do not believe in Allah," Quran 9:29, and "When the sacred months have passed, slay the idolaters wherever you find them," Quran 9:5, are often cited by critics who claim that Islam condones violence. The context of these verses is widely debated. Some scholars argue they were revealed in times of war and are not universally applicable, while others believe they remain relevant today. The principle of abrogation, naskh, further complicates Quranic interpretation. Some Islamic scholars believe that earlier, more peaceful verses were later overridden by stronger, more aggressive commands. If this principle is applied, it raises important questions. Which teachings are meant to be followed today, and which were specific to historical contexts? The role of hadith, sayings and actions of Muhammad, also influences how the Quran is interpreted. Different Islamic sects place varying levels of emphasis on specific hadith collections, leading to further divisions in practice and belief. This diversity of interpretations explains why some Muslim communities emphasize peace and coexistence, while others justify conflict in the name of religion. Understanding the Quran's message requires careful analysis of language, historical context, and theological perspectives. It is not enough to take verses in isolation. Comparing them to the broader teachings of Islam is essential to grasp their intended meaning. Yet the fact remains that different groups extract vastly different conclusions from the same text. So, here's the key question. Is the Quran a book of peace? Or is it a call to arms? Or is it both, depending on how it's interpreted? The answer lies in the lens through which one chooses to view it. Jihad is one of the most widely debated concepts in Islam, often misunderstood by both Muslims and non-Muslims. The term itself means struggle in Arabic, but its interpretations vary significantly depending on religious, political, and cultural contexts. While some view jihad as a personal internal struggle for self-improvement, others see it as a divine command for warfare. The Quran mentions jihad multiple times, sometimes referring to it as an internal spiritual effort to become a better believer, and sometimes as a physical battle against those who oppose Islam. Many Islamic scholars emphasize that the greater jihad is the struggle against one's own sinful inclinations, while the lesser jihad refers to armed conflict under specific conditions. This distinction is crucial in understanding how different groups interpret Islamic teachings. Throughout history, jihad has been used to justify both defensive and offensive wars. Early Islamic expansion involved military campaigns justified under the banner of jihad, and throughout the centuries, various Muslim rulers have invoked jihad to rally support for their conquests. In modern times, militant groups have taken these interpretations further, using religious texts to justify terrorism and violence. However, many mainstream Muslim scholars argue that these violent interpretations distort the true meaning of jihad. They emphasize that warfare in Islam has strict ethical guidelines, prohibiting the killing of innocent civilians, women, children, and the destruction of property. Despite this, extremist groups continue to cite Quranic verses out of context to advance their agendas, creating a perception that Islam is inherently violent. Governments and media often fuel the confusion surrounding jihad, either by generalizing all Muslims as extremists or by downplaying legitimate concerns about radicalization. This polarization prevents constructive dialogue and mutual understanding. Instead of engaging with the complexities of Islamic teachings, many societies either fear or ignore the topic altogether. To understand jihad fully, one must separate religious doctrine from political exploitation. While some Muslims see jihad as a call to inner spiritual growth, others have weaponized it for personal or political gain. The real question remains, is jihad a principle of self-discipline, or has it become a tool of manipulation in the wrong hands? The answer depends on which interpretation is followed. The relationship between Muslims and non-Muslims has been shaped by both religious doctrine and historical events. The Quran and Hadith contain verses that outline how Muslims should interact with people of other faiths, but these teachings are subject to interpretation. Some verses promote peaceful coexistence, while others set conditions for non-Muslims living under Islamic rule. One of the key principles in Islamic theology is the concept of dhimmi, which refers to Jews and Christians living under Muslim rule. Historically, these groups were granted protection in exchange for paying a tax known as jizya. While some argue that this system ensured religious tolerance, others see it as a form of institutionalized discrimination. The way this policy was applied varied across different Islamic empires, sometimes allowing for harmony and at other times leading to oppression. Islamic scripture contains verses that emphasize respect for non-Muslims. For example, Quran 60:8 states, Allah does not forbid you from being kind and just to those who have not fought against you on account of religion or driven you from your homes. This verse suggests that peaceful relations are encouraged when non-Muslims do not pose a threat. However, there are also verses that instruct Muslims to fight those who oppose Islam. Quran 9:29 states, "Fight those who do not believe in Allah until they pay the jizya with willing submission." This has led to differing interpretations on whether Islam inherently promotes warfare against non-Muslims, or whether such instructions were specific to certain historical contexts. Many Muslim-majority countries today have varying degrees of religious tolerance. Some nations, such as Indonesia and Malaysia, promote coexistence, while others impose strict laws on non-Muslims, restricting their rights and freedoms. The rise of radical groups in certain regions has also led to violence against religious minorities, further complicating the global perception of Islam's stance on non-Muslims. Despite these complexities, millions of Muslims around the world live peacefully alongside people of other faiths. The actions of radical groups do not represent the beliefs of the majority. The real challenge is distinguishing between scriptural interpretation, historical context, and modern political agendas. So, the key question to consider is, does Islam truly promote tolerance toward non-Muslims, or is coexistence only possible under specific conditions? The answer depends on which verses and historical examples are used to support the argument. The role of women in Islam has been a topic of significant debate, with interpretations ranging from empowerment to oppression. The Quran contains verses that discuss women's rights, their responsibilities, and their treatment within society. However, the way these verses are applied varies greatly across different cultures and communities. One of the most quoted verses regarding women is Quran 4:34, which discusses the role of men as maintainers of women and has been interpreted to justify male authority in households. Some scholars argue that this verse is meant to emphasize responsibility and protection rather than superiority, while others claim it enforces patriarchal control. The interpretation of such verses significantly affects the status of women in Muslim societies. Islam grants women rights that were revolutionary for their time, such as inheritance, the right to own property, and financial independence. However, cultural traditions often override religious teachings, leading to restrictive practices like forced marriages, honor killings, and gender segregation. These are not necessarily Islamic laws, but rather cultural customs that have been justified using religious rhetoric. One of the most controversial topics is the hijab and other forms of Islamic dress. Some women wear the hijab as a symbol of modesty and devotion, while others feel pressured by societal norms or even government mandates. Countries like Iran and Saudi Arabia enforce strict dress codes, whereas others, like Turkey and Tunisia, have banned religious coverings in certain settings. The hijab, therefore, is not just a religious issue but also a political one. Women's rights under Islamic law, Sharia, differ depending on the country. In some places, women have made significant advancements in education, politics, and business, while in others, they are legally restricted from basic freedoms like driving, voting, or traveling without a male guardian. These discrepancies highlight the role of interpretation in determining women's status in Islam. Feminist movements within the Muslim world have emerged, advocating for a reinterpretation of religious texts to align with gender equality. These reformers argue that Islam was originally progressive in granting rights to women, and that patriarchal interpretations have distorted its true message. However, such movements often face resistance from conservative religious leaders. The ultimate question remains: does Islam inherently oppress women? Or is the issue one of cultural misinterpretation and selective enforcement? The answer lies in how Islamic teachings are applied across different societies. Islam is not just a religion, but also a comprehensive way of life that extends into legal, political, and economic systems. The concept of an Islamic state, where governance is based on Islamic law, Sharia, has been a subject of controversy in both Muslim and non-Muslim societies. Historically, Islamic governance was based on the caliphate system, where rulers claimed both political and religious authority. The early caliphs, following Muhammad's death, ruled vast empires, implementing laws derived from the Quran and Hadith. However, over time, different dynasties and interpretations led to varying applications of Islamic governance. Sharia law is a fundamental aspect of Islamic governance, encompassing criminal justice, family law, and economic regulations. Some countries implement Sharia fully, such as Saudi Arabia and Iran, while others apply it selectively or alongside secular legal systems. The severity of punishment under Sharia, including amputations and executions, has led to human rights concerns, particularly regarding freedom of expression and gender equality. The modern world has seen the rise of political Islam, where Islamic movements seek to integrate religious principles into governance. Groups like the Muslim Brotherhood advocate for Islamic political structures, while others, such as ISIS, have distorted these principles to justify extremist rule. This has led to conflicts within Muslim societies about the role of Islam in politics. Secularism is another point of contention. Some Muslim-majority countries, like Turkey and Indonesia, have embraced secular governance, while others see secularism as a threat to religious identity. The debate over whether Islam should be separated from politics remains unresolved, with passionate arguments on both sides. One of the key questions is whether an Islamic state can truly uphold democratic principles. Some argue that Islam's emphasis on justice and community welfare aligns with democracy, while others believe that religious governance inherently suppresses individual freedoms. The reality is that different interpretations of Islam lead to vastly different political systems. So the fundamental issue is, should Islam be a personal faith, or does it naturally extend into governance and law? The answer depends on one's perspective on the relationship between religion and the state. Islamic teachings are not solely derived from the Quran. They are also deeply influenced by the Hadith, which are the recorded sayings and actions of the Prophet Muhammad. These texts provide further context to Quranic revelations and serve as a primary source for Islamic law. However, the authenticity, interpretation, and application of hadith have been subjects of intense debate among scholars for centuries. The hadith collections were compiled centuries after Muhammad's death, leading to questions about their reliability. Scholars developed a system to classify hadith based on authenticity, ranging from sahih, authentic, to da'if, weak, and maudu, fabricated. Despite these classifications, disagreements persist over which hadith should be considered authoritative, leading to major differences in Islamic practice among various sects. Islamic jurisprudence, or fiqh, is the interpretation of divine law based on both the Quran and hadith. Different schools of thought such as Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, and Hanbali within Sunni Islam and Ja'fari within Shia Islam have developed unique legal frameworks. These variations explain why Islamic law is implemented differently across Muslim-majority countries, even when they claim to follow the same religious texts. Some hadith are particularly controversial, especially those regarding women's rights, jihad, apostasy, and punishment for crimes. Critics argue that certain hadith promote outdated and oppressive practices, while traditionalists believe that all authentic hadith must be followed as divine guidance. The question of whether hadith can be reinterpreted, or even rejected, remains one of the most sensitive topics in Islamic discourse. Another layer of complexity arises from the principle of abrogation, where later revelations or hadith override earlier ones. This principle has been used to justify contradictory interpretations of Islamic law, particularly concerning warfare and peace. For instance, some scholars believe that earlier, more peaceful Quranic verses were later replaced by stricter commands regarding non-Muslims. The role of hadith in modern society is highly debated. Reformist scholars argue that many hadith reflect historical context rather than universal truths, while conservative clerics insist that they are fundamental to Islamic identity. This ongoing debate directly impacts issues like gender roles, legal punishments, and relations with non-Muslims. So, the essential question is, should Muslims strictly adhere to hadith as divine law, or should they be reassessed in light of modern ethics and historical scrutiny? The answer determines how Islamic societies evolve in the modern world. Apostasy, the act of leaving Islam, is one of the most controversial issues within Islamic theology. In many Muslim-majority countries, renouncing Islam is considered a punishable offense, sometimes carrying the death penalty. This stance is rooted in both the hadith and interpretations of Sharia law, but its legitimacy and necessity are widely debated. One of the most cited hadith on apostasy states, "Whoever changes his religion, kill him." Sahih al-Bukhari. Traditionalist scholars argue that apostasy is an act of betrayal against the Muslim community, akin to treason. In historical Islamic empires, apostasy was often associated with rebellion, which justified severe punishments. However, modern scholars question whether these rulings should still apply today. Blasphemy laws, which criminalize insults against Islam, Muhammad, or the Quran, are enforced in several countries, including Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. These laws have led to severe punishments, including imprisonment and execution, often based on vague accusations. Critics argue that such laws violate freedom of speech and are frequently used as political tools to suppress dissent. While the Quran itself does not prescribe execution for apostasy, verses such as Quran 3:85, which states that Islam is the only acceptable faith in God's eyes, have been interpreted to justify harsh penalties. Reformists argue that faith must be a personal choice and that forced belief contradicts the very essence of spirituality. The global reaction to apostasy and blasphemy cases has been intense. International human rights organizations frequently condemn these laws, arguing that they contribute to persecution and extremism. On the other hand, conservative religious leaders defend them as necessary to maintain Islamic values and prevent social disorder. The debate over apostasy and blasphemy raises critical questions about the balance between religious tradition and human rights. Should faith be enforced by law, or should individuals be free to believe or disbelieve without fear of punishment? At its core, the issue asks, is Islam a faith that compels belief through legal consequences, or should it evolve to embrace religious freedom? The answer will determine how the religion interacts with modern legal and ethical standards. Sharia law is one of the most debated aspects of Islam. It is often seen as either a divine system of justice or an outdated legal code incompatible with modern human rights. The truth is more complex, as Sharia is not a single, rigid system, but a collection of religious principles that can be interpreted and applied in different ways. Sharia is derived from the Quran, Hadith, and scholarly consensus, ijma, shaping everything from criminal justice to financial transactions and personal conduct. Some aspects of Sharia, such as charity, zakat, and contracts, align with universal ethical principles. However, certain laws, such as those concerning blasphemy, apostasy, and corporal punishment, are sources of major controversy. One of the most debated elements of Sharia is hudud punishments, which include amputations for theft, flogging for adultery, and execution for apostasy. These punishments are enforced in some Muslim-majority countries, while others have reformed their legal systems to exclude them. Critics argue that such laws violate human rights, while supporters claim they maintain moral order. The application of Sharia varies widely. In Saudi Arabia and Iran, it is strictly enforced, influencing criminal law, dress codes, and gender roles. In contrast, countries like Indonesia and Turkey have adapted Islamic principles to coexist with secular governance. This diversity highlights that Sharia is not a monolithic system, but is shaped by cultural and political influences. Islamic reformers argue that Sharia should evolve with time. They point out that even within Islamic history, legal interpretations have changed. Some scholars propose that the ethical objectives of Sharia, justice, compassion, and societal welfare, should take precedence over rigid punishments. However, such views face strong resistance from conservative religious authorities. The presence of Sharia courts in Western countries has sparked debates about legal pluralism and integration. Some Muslim communities seek Sharia-based family law, while critics worry about conflicts with national legal systems. This raises fundamental questions about the role of religion in secular societies. At its core, the debate over Sharia law asks, is it meant to be a fixed legal system, or should it adapt to modern human rights standards? The answer will determine how Islam interacts with contemporary legal frameworks worldwide. The relationship between Islam and science has been dynamic, ranging from periods of immense intellectual growth to accusations of religious resistance to progress. During the Islamic Golden Age, 8th and 14th century, Muslim scholars made significant contributions to astronomy, medicine, mathematics, and philosophy. However, modern perceptions often portray Islam as being in conflict with scientific progress. Historically, Islamic scholars such as Al-Hazen, optics, Avicenna, medicine, and Al-Khwarizmi, algebra, played crucial roles in shaping scientific thought. Islamic civilizations preserved and translated Greek and Roman knowledge, passing it on to Europe and influencing the Renaissance. This period demonstrates that Islam and science were once deeply interconnected. However, the rise of conservative religious interpretations has, in some cases, led to skepticism toward scientific advancements. Some Muslim-majority societies have resisted aspects of evolutionary biology, cosmology, and medical innovations due to perceived conflicts with religious texts. This has fueled debates on whether Islamic teachings should be interpreted metaphorically or literally. The Quran contains verses that discuss natural phenomena, which some Muslims interpret as proof of the text's divine knowledge. Concepts related to embryology, astronomy, and oceanography are often cited as evidence that Islam is compatible with science. However, critics argue that these interpretations rely on vague or selective readings of the text. Education systems in many Muslim-majority countries reflect these tensions. While some embrace modern scientific curricula, others emphasize religious teachings over empirical research. This has led to disparities in technological and medical advancements across different Islamic societies. Progressive Muslim scholars advocate for a reinterpretation of religious texts in light of modern discoveries. They argue that Islam encourages intellectual curiosity and that restricting scientific inquiry contradicts the faith's historical legacy. However, these ideas face strong resistance from those who view scientific theories as threats to religious belief. So the fundamental question remains, is Islam inherently opposed to scientific progress, or is it a matter of cultural and political influence? The answer lies in how religious teachings are understood and applied in the modern world. The 20th and 21st centuries have seen the rise of political Islam, where religious ideology is used to justify governance, activism, and in some cases, violence. Movements such as the Muslim Brotherhood, Salafism, and jihadist groups have reshaped global politics, raising questions about the relationship between Islam and power. One of the key factors behind the rise of political Islam is the collapse of Islamic empires and colonial rule. As European powers withdrew from Muslim-majority countries, different factions sought to fill the power vacuum. Some advocated for secular nationalism, while others pushed for Islamic governance based on Sharia. Radical groups such as Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and Boko Haram have exploited religious texts to justify violence. They claim to represent true Islam, using jihad as a call to arms. However, many Muslim scholars and leaders reject these interpretations, arguing that they distort Islam for political gain. The influence of Wahhabism, a strict interpretation of Islam originating from Saudi Arabia, has also played a role in shaping extremist ideology. With financial backing from oil-rich nations, Wahhabi teachings have spread globally, reinforcing fundamentalist views that reject secularism and modern interpretations of Islam. Governments worldwide struggle with how to counter radicalization without alienating Muslim communities. Some nations have banned Islamic political parties, while others have attempted to integrate moderate Islam into governance. However, suppressing political Islam often fuels resentment, creating a cycle of extremism and authoritarian responses. Despite these challenges, many Muslim-majority countries are actively working to redefine the role of Islam in politics. Nations like the UAE and Egypt have cracked down on extremist groups, while others, such as Tunisia, are experimenting with Islamic democracy. These differing approaches highlight the ongoing struggle to balance faith and governance. At its core, this issue raises the question, is political Islam an unavoidable outcome of the religion, or is it a reaction to historical and geopolitical struggles? The answer determines the future of Islam's role in global politics. The relationship between Islam and the Western world has been shaped by centuries of interaction, from the Crusades to colonialism and modern geopolitics. Some argue that the two civilizations are fundamentally incompatible, while others believe that conflicts arise from political and economic interests rather than religious differences. Western perceptions of Islam are often influenced by terrorism, immigration debates, and cultural clashes. Events such as 9/11, the rise of ISIS, and refugee crises have contributed to negative stereotypes, painting Islam as a monolithic and violent ideology. In contrast, many Muslims feel misrepresented, arguing that Islam is diverse and that extremist groups do not represent the majority. The issue of Sharia law in Western countries has fueled debates on multiculturalism and integration. While some Muslim communities seek religious accommodations, others fear that Western values such as gender equality and freedom of speech are under threat. This tension has led to policies restricting Islamic practices, such as hijab bans and surveillance programs targeting Muslim communities. The media plays a major role in shaping public perception. Sensationalized coverage of Islamic extremism often overshadows positive contributions of Muslims in science, culture, and politics. This creates a cycle where fear and misinformation dominate discussions about Islam in the West. Despite these tensions, millions of Muslims successfully integrate into Western societies, contributing to business, politics, and culture. Interfaith dialogues and educational initiatives aim to bridge gaps and challenge misconceptions. The challenge is whether mutual understanding can outweigh political rhetoric. The core question is, are Islam and the West doomed to conflict, or can they coexist through dialogue and mutual respect? The future depends on whether both sides are willing to engage in honest conversation rather than ideological battles. As we look toward the future, Islam stands at a crossroads. With over 1.9 billion followers, it remains one of the most influential forces in global society. However, debates over its role in modern life, whether it should reform, maintain its traditional principles, or experience further radicalization, are shaping the destiny of Muslim communities worldwide. One of the biggest challenges facing Islam today is the call for reform. Many progressive scholars argue that Islam, like Christianity and Judaism before it, must adapt to modern realities. They advocate for reinterpreting the Quran and Hadith in ways that align with democracy, human rights, and gender equality. Countries like Tunisia, Morocco, and Indonesia have taken steps toward reform, modifying laws to grant women more rights and challenging traditional religious interpretations. At the same time, conservative and radical groups resist these changes. Hardline clerics argue that Islam is perfect and does not need reform, warning that modernization leads to westernization and moral decline. In some countries, blasphemy and apostasy laws are used to silence reformists, making progress difficult. This ideological battle between modernists and traditionalists is at the heart of Islam's future trajectory. Technology and globalization are also playing a major role in shaping Islamic discourse. The internet has become a battleground where reformers, extremists, and traditionalists compete for influence. Social media platforms amplify both progressive ideas and radical propaganda, making it easier than ever for individuals to either challenge or reinforce their religious beliefs. Young Muslims in particular are exposed to diverse interpretations of Islam, leading to increased polarization within Muslim communities. The rise of secularism and atheism in Muslim-majority countries is another emerging trend. In recent years, a growing number of young Muslims have begun questioning religious doctrines, often in response to government oppression, social injustice, and restrictive religious laws. Some governments have responded with crackdowns, while others are attempting to rebrand Islam as a more inclusive and personal faith rather than a strict legal system. Islamic revivalism is also gaining momentum. Many Muslims believe that the solution to the world's problems lies not in reform, but in a return to true Islam. This sentiment fuels movements ranging from peaceful spiritual revivals, such as Sufism, to more political and militant expressions, such as Salafism and Islamist groups seeking to establish Sharia-based governance. The question of which version of Islam will dominate the future remains uncertain. So, the defining question for the future is, will Islam embrace reform and evolve, or will it resist change and continue on its traditional path? The answer will determine Islam's relationship with the modern world, shaping societies for generations to come. We have explored the depths of Islamic history, theology, governance, and its impact on the modern world. From its origins to its global influence today, we've seen how interpretations of Islam vary widely, some leading to peace, intellectual progress, and personal growth, while others fuel radicalism, oppression, and political control. But the real question remains: what comes next? The future of Islam depends on the choices made by Muslims, scholars, and society as a whole. Will it embrace reform and align with universal human rights? Or will it continue to be dominated by rigid traditionalism? Will political Islam rise or decline? And perhaps most importantly, will individuals choose faith freely? Or will they remain bound by fear, dogma, and cultural pressures? We live in a time of spiritual awakening and intellectual exploration. You, the viewer, are part of this great conversation. You have the power to seek truth, challenge narratives, and embrace faith with a genuine heart. If you are on a journey of understanding, don't stop here. Keep reading, questioning, and searching for the ultimate truth. If this video has made you think in new ways, subscribe to the channel and take the next step toward truth and freedom. If you believe in justice, love, and wisdom, let's walk this path together. Hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and let's keep this dialogue alive. And most importantly, seek Jesus, the embodiment of love, grace, and salvation. He is not just a prophet or a historical figure. He is the way, the truth, and the life. If you are searching for peace beyond religion, turn to him today. Before we end, I want to take a moment to thank you for being here. My name is Oliver, and I am passionate about exploring truth, challenging ideas, and walking with you on this journey. Whether you are here out of curiosity, faith, or a desire for deeper understanding, know that you are not alone. This is more than just a video. This is a conversation, a community, and a place where you are valued. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I look forward to continuing this journey together. Stay strong, stay open-minded, and above all, stay in the light of truth. I'll see you in the next video. God bless you.